Good morning, everyone. My name is EJ. Uh, that's what I go by. My real name is Edward Leganta. I'm a member of Reform Louisville and a staff at Kentucky Youth Advocates focused on including voices of those with lived experience with injustice, policy, and practice change. Thank you for joining us for this morning's legislative Q&A session. We're looking forward to hearing from Senator Givens and Representative Timoney, leaders of the Race, Equity, and Access to Opportunity Commission in Frankfurt. Thank you both for taking time to speak with us today. Before we get started, a special thank you to our signature sponsor and the Better Health of Kentucky, as well as our presenting sponsors, Seven Counties and Save the Children. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Terry Brooks to frame today's discussion.
Hey, EJ, thanks a lot. We are so proud of EJ. I got to do a little bragging here is that the Anna E. Casey Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of UPS, they put out a proposal and literally dozens of groups across the country applied for it. They awarded 3 grants, one to somewhere in California, one I think in Massachusetts, and to KYA. And what it allowed us to do is, as EJ said, he has the courage to talk about that he's been part of the juvenile justice system. And we believe that there's no more important voices to listen to than young people who have experienced it. So we're so happy that the Casey Foundation basically hired him for us. Senator Givens, the good work that work team is doing that you made happen, there's a great source right there in terms of somebody who can talk about the real deal, not just what they've heard. So EJ, I wanted to just commend you and let everybody know how glad we are to have you with us. As y'all know, Children's Advocacy Week kicked off yesterday. Tomorrow's our Super Bowl with the big rally, and we are so happy that we have a full week of activities. This morning is such an important discussion. As you know, the General Assembly has established a Commission on Race and Opportunity. I believe Senator Givens is who sponsored that. And so joining us today are the co-chairs of that group. My job is to do a very quick intro. David, I'm going to take you back to 2009, and I really didn't like you then because at the time, we did not have great access to Senate leadership. There was one staff member, a guy named Harlan Hatter, who secretly helped us. And he called me right after the election in 2009 and said, I don't think I can help you anymore. And I was like, what, did you get caught? He's like, no. He goes, they got this new guy, David Givens, who apparently is going to be a rock star. They're going to make him chair of the Agriculture Committee. He's a freshman, and they're making him a committee chair. And they've told me my entire job is to help him. So I'm out for you. So like, who is this guy? Well, it turns out that you may be good in agriculture, but you're even better when it comes to kids and families. And you know, we appreciate so many, many aspects of your leadership. I'm just so happy that that Representative Timoney has joined Senator Givens as co-chair. We got to know Killian last year, and except the fact that he is a real smart aleck regarding a certain college rivalry within the state, and he is on the wrong side of that rivalry. Except for that, he is just terrific. What I appreciate about Representative Timoney is that he blends just a passion from his experience as educator. And what he gets is that you can't separate K-12 from health or juvenile justice from family stability. So he looks at kids in such a holistic manner. Representative, we appreciate both your brain and your heart when it comes to kids. This is a critical topic. Let's just put aside all of the political correctness and partisanship when it comes to race. And let's just tell it like it is. If there is a kid in Kentucky whose opportunity is limited because of the color of his or her skin or the zip code in which he or she resides, that's just wrong. That is just wrong. And that's what this commission is charged with fixing. David and Timoney and Killian, we appreciate the leadership you're going to give to this group. And I'm going to kick it to my colleague, Courtney Downs, who is KYA's Chief Equity and Innovation Officer. Courtney, take it away.
All right, thank you, Terry. And thank you to Senator Gibbons and Representative Timoney again for joining us today. And so just to dive in, because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, for those who maybe aren't as familiar, who are joining us today, who aren't as familiar with the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity, can you maybe just give like a really quick high-level overview, and then as a follow-up, and more importantly, why you all wanted to be involved with it? Either one of you can start.
Courtney, I'll do.
I think you might have lost him. Okay. I think Senator, you're kind of cutting in and out right now. Representative, do you want to jump in while we see if we can get him back?
Sure, of course. First of all, thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Terry, thank you. Like you said, I'm going to just go right back, and your only flaw that I found is that your sports teams don't have blue and white as their main colors and reside in Lexington, Kentucky. So Terry, I mean, how about that basketball team this year, Terry? I mean, you guys won a game yet? I'm just asking. So
our women's team is great.
Yes, definitely. Coach Waltz is having a much better time than Coach Payne is doing at this point. But all right, we'll go ahead and put that aside. This is my work in the school system has allowed me the opportunity to work with all kids, and I'm not necessarily. I was never a teacher who was worried about from 9 o'clock until 10:15. They walk in my door at 9 o'clock and they walk out at 10:15. And I'll say that I'm like most teachers. You genuinely care about the kids in your classrooms, and you genuinely care about what types of things that you can do to help them be successful. And as I was a high school teacher and a coach at Dunbar for 13 years, and then I went into administration. I commuted to Jefferson County every day to Watterson Elementary School, where I was assistant principal, and loved it. That gave me my K-5 experience that opened my eyes to things I didn't necessarily even think about as a high school teacher. And I was able to see kind of, different gaps that may exist, or things that would be outside of the kids' control. And then I went back to Lexington and was assistant principal at Winburn Middle School for 6 years. And Winburn Middle School is a tough school. It was a tough school. And, it's funny is when I was there and I'd be working with kids and I would just talk to them. And they would say, well, you didn't want to be here. You were placed here. Because nobody would want to come here and work. And like that was, it's powerful stuff. And I'm like, no, I chose to be here. And they said, why? And they said, because there's a lot of work to be done and I want to do my part. And that environment opened my eyes to all of the different peripheral impacts for kids during the day. I was regularly working with the cabinet. I was regularly working with juvenile justice. I was regularly working with, court diversion. I was regularly working with single moms. I was regularly working with poverty. I was regularly working with underperforming kids who were underperforming because of a label, not because they weren't trying or because growth wasn't there. It's because the standard that we were comparing them to said that they were failing. I saw an overworked teaching staff And that has a direct impact. You know, and we have an education committee meeting today at 10 o'clock where we're talking about teacher recruitment. And the facet of quality education for kids who need it most, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And if you have a rested and empowered teacher, you're going to have more energy to deal with the challenges that come your way. And I think that that's something that I think it's in a society assumes that when you walk in the door, but teachers are humans too, and they lead with their hearts. And your heart gets beaten up sometimes. And that, you know, that when you need to have patience most is usually at the end of the day. And that's usually when they're struggling the most. And that's usually when kids start acting up. And then it's, you know, and then you just have one bad experience, and then the kid checks out and they said, I hate school. And I'll say this last kind of anecdotal piece. Our discipline, our student behavior discipline, was always the worst as far as fights on Friday afternoons.
Oh, okay.
And it's because students were facing a weekend and they were trying to extend the structure of the school day.
Yeah.
The only way they knew how. And that's a powerful piece. And that's something that really kind of shaped my vision as far as what I want to do with this commission. You know, and I think that, and Senator Givens he's so much more eloquent than I am, and so much more intuitive when it comes to things. I typically just speak. And I think that Terry and this group, if we're talking about being productive in that particular commission, we have to be fearless about our conversations. And we have to not be afraid. And I'll go ahead and say this, it happens on both sides. This cancel culture that exists, like if you have people who are white and they genuinely care about Black issues, but they're scared to talk about them because they don't know, or they're worried about saying the wrong thing, then they're done. And that's where we are. Like, people walk a tightrope when you're talking about race right now. And I may have said something that was offensive already today, but I feel like hopefully the sum total of my efforts will prove positive, and that you can overlook some of the mistakes I may have made or the terminology along the way, because we have a much bigger, we're not trying to find a minuscule thing. We're trying to find a transformational thing. Yeah. And you're going to have to, you know, there's people make mistakes along the way. And I feel bad for people today that genuinely care about this topic, but are scared to death to bring it up. And I think that that's a really, really important point. And that's where Senator Givens is a master at. He's a master at finding the nerve and staying there and being uncomfortable, living in that kind of discomfort. Like, okay, this is a risky topic. Like, should we be talking about it? That's where the work needs to be done. And that's where I feel like he does a really good job with. And I want to be able to support that. I am fearless. I hope that you all view me as a positive person who wants to move things forward, but I may make a mistake along the way. But yeah, my heart is in improving all people, and it comes from my faith. You know, I believe that and I say this with everything, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this here, but if Jesus was sitting here next to me, he leads with love, he leads with forgiveness and empathy, and he's my strength. So that's why I do, and that's why I'm really passionate about being on this commission.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And Senator Givens, I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to share about what made you want to be involved with this commission, or we can just kind of roll into the next question, because I feel like Representative Timoney kind of set it up pretty well too.
Courtney, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Great. I apologize for the inconvenience of the headache of Zoom. I'm going to be brief. And let me start by saying thanks to all the participants on the call. I just looked at the number. We've got almost 50 people involved in this conversation, and that's the critical thing. If we can use the Commission on Race as a platform to bring folks together around difficult conversations, my colleague, Representative Timoney, spoke eloquently about the goal of the commission and his vision, and I'm so excited to be working alongside him. He used the word fearless, and in the space of the commission, we found the ability to have what I call some fearless conversations. We haven't gone quite as far in those discussions as I'd like to, but we're practicing being a group and practicing being in a space of challenging, difficult conversations, because he's right in lots of ways. When you bring up the race question and you talk about disparities and you talk about uncomfortable statistics and you talk about mortality rates and birth rates and minority contracts in state government, you end up in some space where people start to look at themselves, and the question is, am I a racist? Once we get beyond that, we can have some really good, difficult conversation. Now, I do have to say one caution to EJ. EJ, wonderfully done. Be careful with Terry Brooks. Terry is slippery and tricky. Terry will say all these eloquent, nice, beautiful, wonderful things about you, and then he'll expect you to live into them. It's one of those tricky talents that he has. So watch out for him, because he'll make you feel so good and look so good, and then he'll say, you got to do this for me because I know you're capable.
That's very good. All right, let's go ahead and keep rolling. So I think, with both of you kind of talking about these difficult conversations, and I feel like that really ties in well with my next question. Obviously, with session starting today, I want to kind of hear a little bit more about like what we can expect from you all. But I also wanted to preface it by just acknowledging that in addition to how difficult these conversations are and this work is, policy change just in general takes a long time. And I think it's really important to kind of remind people of that, or to continuously lift that up, that even when, a bill is signed into law, just the process of implementation and everything else can really take a long time. So, I don't want like this question or any of your answers really to be construed as, a quick or an easy fix. As Terry said, this is just kind of, it's comprehensive, and it's something that's going to have to be ongoing. So in the interim, there was a review. You all did a review of some of the bills that had been filed in 2022 that had a race equity component. And there was, and I understood it to be just a very honest conversation about some missed opportunities from the commission around championing or supporting some of those bills. And then there was also this verbal commitment from the commission to be more intentional about identifying and supporting policies that address those inequities. So what can we expect from you all this legislative session? Are there bills that you're able to talk about that you're sponsoring, or can you maybe share any other steps that you might have taken to address those inequities in a meaningful way?
Courtney, I'll dive in first on that one, and I'm gonna say yes, there are gonna be some legislative pieces to watch out for in a positive way. We had October and November meetings that were two of our very best meetings, and we were looking at health equity numbers from Norton's Institute. We had Dr. Dana Quisenberry with UK Department of Health Management talking about African-American opioid use and some of the data around that. We had a letter back from the finance cabinet specific to the question of minority-owned businesses and contracts, and the lack of data that's being actually recorded in state government around minority-owned businesses and minority-owned business contracts. Then we went into rural Kentucky with Fulton County and Tracy Pulley and some folks there talking about how desperate that community is. And that's something we've got to think about when we talk about the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity. It's not solely on the question of challenge between one racial group and another. We have demographics across the state that suffer from lack of access to opportunity, and Fulton County and those folks made a great case for that. So you're going to see some legislation around those sorts of things. You're going to see some conversations specific to legislation coming out of the commission. But I think more importantly, and I'm going to use a very specific example for this, what I've experienced in the Commission on Race has given me a lens through which to view the world a little differently. And as we wrestle with the question of Department of Juvenile Justice, and people want to bring into the conversation the disproportionate number of Black men, young Black men, that are committing really rather disappointing and painful crimes in Louisville, I'm now able to better understand that it's not because they're Black. I'm now better able to engage in a conversation with my colleagues to say, there's nothing wrong with their color. It's their life experiences that have cast them in this path. And we can't start this conversation with, well, they're young Black men we need to put them in a different place or treat them differently. And so not only am I confident in knowing that, but I'm more confident in speaking into that space.
It's really hard to follow Senator Givens. It's just not, it's, Terry, you put me up against Julie Rocky Adams last time. Like, can I at least pick who you're going to put me up against next time? I mean, I feel like U of L playing Kentucky. Anyway, sorry, I'm really harping on that. That's Terry's fault, everybody. So if you want me to stop, you need to blame Terry. But no, I think that Senator Givens was 100% correct. You know, some of the things that really piqued my interest in a lot of those meetings that he mentioned, you know, the health outcomes for Black mothers. The mortality rate is just, it's atrocious. I mean, it's, you know, if you look into the industrialized world, our numbers are shameful as far as how many Black moms die in that process. Now, I dove into that meeting. Really, like I said, it piqued my interest. I started looking into some areas in the country that have had success in improving those numbers. Birthing centers, doulas or midwives, and then overall just family support. Because when I looked at that data point, I thought it was actually the day the baby is born or the few days after before they leave the hospital. And that's not the case. It's up to 12 months after the baby is born. So most of the numbers are postpartum depression related. Like, y'all, we can fix that. Like, we can do that. We can supplement. We can make sure that there are things put in place there where we're not expanding Medicare, but we're just allowing some of those services that already covered by that to occur in our communities. And that's something that, you know, my sister's a doctor. We have a medical family, and we look at data points like that. And y'all, I mean, I wanted to find out why. And so most of my research from those has been to dive into that particular topic. Because if we don't have mothers who are alive, what's going to happen to their children? You know, our foster adoption service, you know, we're pretty far back with developing where that needs to be. And like, if we're not making sure moms are alive, then everything else is moot, you know? So I think that with some problems, if you can go to the source of where the problem is and fix it there, then other things become less impactful or so I'm really big about treating things as early as possible so that they're not secondary or, you know, third level issues that come out of it. So as far as to answer your question specifically, what policies do of course, I'm always about the education piece. I'm always about making sure the quality education and that's something that I'm a firm, passionate believer with our youth today, is that, you know, the quality that occurs in our public schools needs to be as high as possible. And, you know, I don't wade into the charter choice thing just because I think that 95% of the Commonwealth will remain in public school regardless of whatever schools that we put up. So that means that quality has to be high. We can't just, you know, complain about issues about this and that. But so I'm always there, and that's my wheelhouse. So I feel extremely confident in that capacity. If we improve that quality, then our outcomes long term will be much better. You know, the juvenile justice reform conversations, I haven't waded into that, but I have been very cognizant of listening to what's going on there. And is this research based? Is it research based or is it emotional? And the data has to show things. Now, I'll tell you all, and you all know this too, that sometimes committing to, if there's a problem, there's usually two modes of handling it. There's the quick way, and it's usually pretty intense, and, you know, but then there's the long-term way. And if you look at school-based discipline as an example, and this is probably a bad example, but I think you guys will see where I'm going with this. Kid misbehaves, you suspend. Kid misbehaves, you suspend. Or restorative practices. Restorative practices take a lot longer. So those misbehaviors may continue to occur. So their behavior data will still show that there's behavior issues, but you're still committed to a long-term fix. And I think that that's one of the things that's really, really difficult because people want results now. And you really have to commit to a good, fair path moving forward. And I guess for me in particular, I set a goal of losing 20 pounds before the session started. So I could have gone to my doctor and I said, wire my mouth shut. And I'd start losing weight immediately. Or I could reduce my caloric intake by 1,000 calories a day. And in 300 years, I will have lost the 20 pounds. So, and I think that's probably a better example is that we have to be committed to sometimes long-term solutions, and we have to keep the faith that they're research-based and they are best practices and that they will yield outcomes that we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Senator, were you going to jump back in? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you were.
I realize we're running a bit low on time, and I had one thought I wanted to share with the group, because this number of 50 engaged in this conversation, again, that excites me. And I think there's a small but significant thing each one of us can be engaged in. And this is something that I'm not always the best at, but by sharing it with this group, I'm holding myself accountable to try and do it. Over the course of the next week or so, find a young person that you can connect with. And this doesn't mean buy them clothes or buy them a t-shirt or take them a gift. Sit down and ask that young person, hey, what are your plans? What's going to happen after high school? What are you excited about? Tell me something about you so that I can know you better. And by doing that, we do create a self-fulfilling prophecy. The same sort of thing I was teasing Terry about a moment ago, that self-fulfilling prophecy of connecting with a young person, investing in that young person's life, and then staying connected and checking in on them on a semi-regular basis. It doesn't have to be someone in your family. It can be someone in your community, someone in your church, someone in your circle of friends. But make that connection, because it is so powerful to these young people to know that someone cares about them. And I think that's something all of us can do. It doesn't take a government program or bureaucracy of some kind, but it has such a powerful impact.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator. And honestly, I think that's kind of the perfect way to close this out. I think we probably could have easily spent like another half an hour, another hour having these conversations, but I really appreciate both of you joining us today and for your commitment to not only kind of like sitting in that discomfort, but then also your commitment long-term to doing this work. We really appreciate it. Thank you both so much for joining us. And thank you everyone else on the call as well for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good one.